Welcome to Wicked Mysteries, the channel where we examine curious, strange and often deadly events. In today's video we examine a twisted tale of revenge and take a look at the 3 suspects who may be guilty. Can you identify the killer? Today's story takes place in upstate New York, 2015. Dr. Mary Yoder was the picture of good health at the time, a successful chiropractor and happily married to her college sweetheart and fellow doctor Bill Yoder. The couple had owned an affluent chiropractic office together for almost 30 years and were now reaping the rewards of a lifetime of hard work. At 60 years old, Mary was enjoying both her career and her family life immensely. She was fit and very active with a zest for life and had many hobbies including dance, gardening, and even pottery. Mary came from a large family, which may help explain her outgoing personality and warm nature. She definitely learned how to stand out from the pack at an early age, and that talent carried on throughout her life. Mary and Bill had gone on to have 3 children of their own, and life was good for the Yoders. Life, however, can cruelly change in just the blink of an eye. Mary started her day as normal. She headed to work and began her morning appointments. She saw several patients and things were running smoothly. She stepped out for lunch as usual, but after she returned back to the office, her health suddenly plummeted out of nowhere. So much so that she had to excuse herself and head home early after the onset of severe vomiting and diarrhea. Mary's condition continued to deteriorate overnight, and the next morning she was rushed to hospital. The doctors were completely puzzled as to what was causing her mysterious illness. She was in excruciating pain and was suffering greatly. She was losing fluids rapidly between the heavy sweating, vomiting, and diarrhea. She also had a high fever and unrelenting, painful abdominal cramps. Her body was in such a weakened state that she suffered a heart attack. This was then followed by 7 more cardiac arrests before her exhausted body finally gave up entirely. Mary Yoder, a seemingly completely healthy woman, had instantly become violently ill and died less than 48 hours later. Her sisters pushed for an immediate autopsy, as what had just occurred was beyond strange. The results, shockingly, showed Mary's illness had not occurred naturally. Instead, her organs and tissue were under attack by some sort of unidentified substance. Poison control tested for the most common arsenic and cyanide-based poisons, but quickly ruled those out. 2 months later, the chemists finally got a hit on the substance found during Mary's autopsy. It was colchicine. This drug is not a poison, but is actually used to treat the arthritic condition gout. When used in the correct dosage, it helps reduce joint inflammation. However, when exceeding the recommended amount, it can produce painful symptoms and in high enough quantities even result in death. Now that investigators knew the unusual type of substance they were dealing with, they had to determine how it got into her system. They began first by exploring the possibility it was accidentally self-administered. Mary was a big believer in holistic medicine and took a variety of daily supplements, as well as cultivating some of her own food in her home garden. Samples were taken from all these sources and sent for analysis to determine if the poison could be linked in any way. The results conclusively proved there was no contamination present. As a byproduct of those results, the police had now ruled out both suicide and accidental death. Instead, they now had the arduous task of tracking down a killer. Mary's death is declared a homicide and the hunt begins. Let's examine the suspects. Mary's husband Bill immediately falls under suspicion. Around 90% of people murdered know their assailant, and around 50% of female victims meet their end at the hands of their spouse in particular. This is why the police always zero in on the husband first if no other obvious perpetrator is known. Statistically, he becomes the prime suspect until eliminated. In Bill's case, the odds were further stacked against him when it came to light that, oddly, he was not in the office working the day Mary became ill and had no alibi for his whereabouts. Furthermore, very quickly after Mary's death, rumours began circulating that Bill began dating her own sister. Very strange behaviour for a seemingly grieving husband. Just as police began to close in on him, a mysterious letter would point the finger elsewhere. The medical examiner's office received an anonymous letter boasting details of the crime, and even naming names. They contacted the police to alert them to the existence of the letter, but later that same day the police themselves actually received a duplicate letter from the same anonymous sender. Whoever sent the letters wanted to be positive they were seen. The possible culprit named in the letters was Adam Yoder, Mary's youngest child. The letter even went as far as naming colchicine as the means of death. Adam Yoder is now the investigators' main suspect. Adam is interrogated and denies any involvement in his mother's death. His car is then searched. The letter, apart from naming him and the drug, also detailed that they would find evidence of the murder inside the car and exactly where to look for it. Under the passenger seat, as instructed, they found a bottle of colchicine and a receipt for its purchase. The receipt even contained an email address tied to Adam, linking him to its purchase. Police began to comb through Adam's life and, as a result, focused on those closest to him as possible witnesses. Their attention fell to his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Kaiytlyn Conley, who coincidentally had worked at the reception of his parents' practice for the last 4 years. Police hoped that Kaiytlyn could share her insight on the family dynamics and highlight any tension between Mary and her son or Mary and her husband. Kaiytlyn, shocked at what had happened, was more than happy to assist the investigation and quickly pointed the crosshairs directly at Adam. As the net closed in on him just as it did his father before him, there was yet again another twist in the tale that stopped police in their tracks. The 2 anonymous letters had been sent for forensic analysis, and the results concluded they had originated from inside the office. Someone from inside the Yoder's business wrote those letters. Furthermore, that someone was a woman. Female DNA was retrieved from beneath one of the stamps. Kaiytlyn willingly provided a DNA sample when asked. However, she also attached the caveat that one of her duties in the office was to pre-stamp envelopes, meaning if it was her DNA that the police had recovered, she had already given them an innocent explanation for its presence. At this point, the police take a step back and recheck over all the evidence collected so far and focus in on that email address from the colchicine receipt. When questioned, Adam admitted that it was very similar to one of the addresses he used, but it was slightly different. That email address had only ever been accessed from 2 devices. The first was located inside Kaiytlyn Conley's home. The second was Kaiytlyn Conley's cell phone. Police now have Kaiytlyn in their sights. During her interrogation, she kept trying to shift focus onto Adam as the guilty party. She was so consistent and measured in her responses, the police began to notice she matched the contents of the letter almost word for word. Investigators always felt that whoever wrote that letter was not an innocent witness trying to help the police, but was more than likely the killer themselves. When asked directly by police, Kaiytlyn finally admits to writing the letter, but denies killing Mary and insists Adam confessed to her he was the killer and she was simply trying to do the right thing and report him. Adam alleges she is doing this purely out of spite to get back at him for their failed romance and that she had even previously given him a supplement that made him feel sick. Mary Yoder was a creature of habit. Every day when she arrived at work, she would drink a protein shake and then another one around lunchtime. She kept her protein shakes at work for convenience. It is believed this is where the poison was administered, and Kaiytlyn Conley, of course, as an employee, had prime access to those drinks and knew Mary's dietary habits. But was she the only one? Police believed so and arrested her. Adam and Kaiytlyn had a very toxic relationship. They fought, broke up and rekindled many times. Adam described her as obsessive, and whenever they were at odds she would reel him back in with various threats and retaliations. He would break it off and she would cry wolf and say she was pregnant when she wasn't. Again, the relationship would end and she would accuse him of sexual assault until he relented and would get back with her. Finally, he broke up with her one last time and she killed his mother and tried to frame him as the ultimate act of revenge. If this was true, then the saddest part of all this is that Mary, it seems, was simply a pawn in a sick and twisted game of revenge. That is Adam's version of events. Kaiytlyn Conley maintains her innocence. She was charged with second-degree murder and faced trial in 2016, but the jury could not agree on her guilt and it ended in a mistrial. She faced trial again in 2017, and that eventually resulted in her conviction for first-degree manslaughter, and she was sentenced to 23 years in prison. Headlines blast her as the angry ex, a vengeful killer, and toxic, jealous lover. She did have motive and means, but so did two others. Adam and Bill were granted immunity for giving evidence against Kaiytlyn and can no longer be charged for the murder. But are they innocent? There are now 3 suspects, 3 motives, and 3 theories. Mary Yoder's death was clearly the result of revenge. Whose revenge is the true mystery here? Mary's family was now divided, many blaming Kaiytlyn for the death and supporting her imprisonment. However, 3 of Mary's sisters, the same 3 that pushed for her immediate autopsy, are adamant that they believe Bill killed their sister with the help of Adam and that Kaiytlyn has been wrongly convicted. Let's take a deeper look at some of their allegations. The women said that Bill had previous experience using colchicine as far back as the 80s when he used it to help grow marijuana crops. Colchicine in this powerful form has been linked to this use. Mary was an avid gardener, but so was Bill. The colchicine was ordered and sent to the chiropractic office, and the drug company required a letter detailing the intended use of the powerful drug before they would supply it. The letter used to obtain the substance described a plan of using it to genetically modify plants. The sisters explain that Kaiytlyn would have absolutely no clue about any of this. Why would colchicine be on her radar as an aid to grow plants or as a deadly poison? The letter was signed by Adam and Mary, and the signatures appear to be legit as no experts were ever called in to prove otherwise. The colchicine was ordered 6 months before Mary's death. Knowing the drug delivery would be linked to the office, they believe both Adam and Bill set up Kaiytlyn to take the fall for ordering it, and the murder. Adam and Bill were never very close, but suddenly began spending a lot of time alone together. Time they spent plotting murder and misdirection, according to Mary's sisters. Bill is described as being very intelligent and a murder mystery fanatic with serious computer knowledge. Both him and Adam had access to Kaiytlyn's devices that were linked to ordering the colchicine and making searches relating to the drug and other poisons. Prepaid credit cards were used to make the payment. Those cards were linked to Kaiytlyn, but does that mean it was definitely her that used them to buy the drug? Or simply that she had some cards and someone else took and used them without her knowledge? Mary had always spoiled her son, and as the baby of the family he was treated as such. However, his mother had begun tightening the reins and wanted him to fend for himself more and not rely on her for money anymore. He was described described by his aunts as having drug and alcohol dependencies and violent rage issues. Was he out for revenge because she was cutting him off financially, and he was livid? Adam had a solid alibi for the day his mother became ill, but was he involved in a scheme to hurt her? He just wasn't the one who got his hands dirty. The sisters state that the level of colchicine inside Mary's body at the time of her arrival at the hospital was actually less than at her time of death, meaning she was dosed more than once. After Mary left work ill and went home, Bill was the only person she was with before going to the hospital. Did he dose her again in that time? She was expelling fluids constantly since becoming ill, and normally this is the body's way of driving the toxins out. Even though still damaging, the level of poison should have been decreasing over time. It was said that Bill also brought Mary a drink, inhalation medicine and cough drops to the hospital. Were they tampered with, and redosing her frequently without anyone's knowledge? The sisters go on to allege Bill had plenty to gain from Mary's death. He wanted to retire, but they had financial issues, and little to no savings but plenty of debt. Bill wrote a book that flopped, and they lost their small nest egg as a result of the failure. He had received an inheritance from his father, but had said to relatives that it was not enough for 2 people to live on. Although rumours were flying around that he moved on quickly after Mary's death with her own sister Kathy, neighbours reported seeing him at her house several times before Mary died, indicating he was having a full-fledged affair during the marriage. He was even said to have been seen embracing and kissing Kathy outside her house. Kathy has a neurological disease, and as a result her sisters believe she is not thinking clearly and is vulnerable. She is also described as being very financially stable. While Bill maintains he and Mary were happy, oddly a call was made from their home to a marriage counsellor just days before her death. Presumably the call was made by Mary herself. It seems there was trouble in paradise. Mary's sisters also emphasised that Kaiytlyn and Mary were close and loved each other, and there was no way she would have wanted her dead. They state that police had blinders on and went after Kaiytlyn full force by whatever means necessary, and ignored their objections and the evidence. Now convicted for murder and locked up for 23 years, Kaiytlyn Conley has plenty of time to reflect on her life so far. She was part of a toxic relationship, that much is true, but is she a killer? Would she really go so far as to kill a woman who was her boss and friend in such a bizarre and cruel way just because she was scorned by Adam? People have killed for much less. But with so much conflicting evidence, it is hard to be 100% sure of the truth. A husband, a son, a friend. Who is guilty in this twisted tale of revenge? The courts believe the answer is Kaiytlyn Conley, but there are those who see her as merely a scapegoat in an even more sordid story. Were the police so focused on Kaiytlyn's guilt that they failed to examine all possibilities, and in doing so did they grant the true killers immunity? Or did they get it right and justice has in fact been served? Mary Yoder was a victim and suffered greatly in the end. Of that much I am certain. For those who had the pleasure of knowing her in life, she is sorely missed in death. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like and subscribe, and remember to hit the notification bell for more wicked mysteries. Remember, always lock your doors and windows, and if you're anything like me, always have an axe nearby just in case. I'll see you in the next one.